Welcome back to Make It Stick. Let's jump into Anki. Alright. Ooh, seven of them. What are the 5 sections of Chapter 5, Avoid Illusions and Knowing? Why is this one always so hard to figure out? Tools and habits for calibrating your judgment, the last one. Golly, why is this one so difficult to always figure out? Successful intelligence? No, is that the next section? Get beyond learning styles. Avoid illusions and knowing. Damn it, dude. The two systems of knowing: memories, illusions, and memory distortions. The two systems of knowing: memories, illusion, distortions. Memory, illusion, distortions. The two systems of knowing: illusions and memory distortions. I don't know. And then the takeaway. Not the takeaway. Tools and habits for calibrating your judgment. Mental models, unskilled and unaware of it. All right. Damn that one. What are the 6 sections of Chapter 6 Get Beyond Learning Styles? Get Beyond Learning Styles. Active learning from the get-go. Successful intelligence. Rule versus example learning. Structure building. Dynamic testing, the takeaway. Not that order, but we got it. I'm going to say good. What does Chapter 4 embrace difficulties about in one sentence? Desirable difficulties, aka retrieval / testing, interleaf practice, varied practice, space practice, generation, some fluency / contextual interferences. These desirable difficulties lead to short-term impediments to learning, but short-term impediments that lead to better long-term learning, better retention, better understanding, more learning transfer, largely through increased cognitive effort. Desirable difficulties: testing, retrieval, spacing, interleaving, varying, generation, some contextual / fluency interruptions are learning techniques that lead to short-term impediments to progress, but deeper, longer-lasting learning with more learning transfer largely to increase cognitive effort. Good. Why can blocked / masked practice feel effective but lead to poor long-term retention? It can feel effective because you see yourself making progress, but it leads to poor long-term retention because it's the short-term memory. It's being developed in short-term memory rather than actual the long-term memory and long-term pathways to the memories. The pathways to the long-term memories. It creates momentary strength. Performance improves temporarily, but the learning doesn't stick due to lack of effortful retrieval and spacing. I say hard because I didn't say momentary strength. What is rule learning? Rule learning is it's when you're learning problems, like how to solve certain problems. It's learning the underlying principles, the abstract patterns to problem solving, rather than the memorizing concrete examples, which is example learning. Rule learning is the act of uncovering the underlying rules, such steps in solving a type of problem, as opposed to memorizing examples, known as example learning. Good enough. In one sense, what is the main point of Chapter 1? Learning is misunderstood. People misunderstand learning. Learning is an acquired skill. The most effective learning techniques, according to science, are often counterintuitive. People often misunderstand learning. Durable learning requires effort, struggle, and retrieval, not passive review. I say hard. What is an illusion of knowing? An illusion of knowing is basically like a misunderstanding. It's an illusion. It's a false sense of knowing or false sense of mastery, often due to poor study techniques, such as mass practice or rereading. Um, hmm. It's an illusion. It's a false sense of a mastery, often due to familiarity or fluency. Yep, caused by a feeling of familiarity or fluency. Good enough. All right, man. Those were kind of tough. What did we learn about yesterday? So we would have been reading about the stories. We had the medical student that went from bottom to the top of class because of largely his retrieval practice he started implementing. Then we read about the psychology student who performed outlier. Uh, he was an outlier for good results, top results. Who just had a list of different things he did. Hard work and discipline system. Sticking to things that work, or just sticking to things. So discipline coming in. Then we started the next section, which is about learning tips for lifelong learners. They basically are like everybody's lifelong learners in some sense. They actually had an interesting note about, the most effective learning techniques according to evidence are actually things we do naturally when we learn when we're growing up, like how to walk, how to talk, etc. It's just that potentially we don't understand intuitively how to apply them to modern learning with books and computers, because we didn't evolve in an environment with books and computers. We evolved in an environment where if you needed to learn something, you just learned by doing it, or from someone telling you to do it, how to do it, and it was relatively simple stuff a lot of the times, or the information was pretty simple compared to how dense and the amount of data and information we have now. But anyway, it seems so far that, well, the first section is retrieval practice, but they're not going through all the retrieval practice again that they did from study sessions for students. They're just kind of telling a story about someone who used retrieval practice effectively to be a lifelong learner. And we're learning about this guy who was exceptionally good at memorizing his lines. And guess what? He used retrieval largely to probably gain his great results through like covering up pages and testing himself. So I'm going to keep reading about this story and keep moving through chapter 8 of Make It Stick. I'll talk to you in a bit. All right. We finished up this retrieval section about the actor who is really good at learning his lines, really effective at learning his characters. One interesting thing I read about, I thought was interesting, was he would read his basically the play forward, and then once he reached the end, or worked through, not just read, but work through, he would start to work through it backwards, which I just thought was interesting because it's like then the when you're reading it forward, the last scene had you're most familiar with the last scene, so that brings over a lot of familiarity to the next scene. It makes it more, brings more context and meaning. And when you work it from the last scene to the first scene, you kind of like the most recent thing you just worked through was the scene in front of it. So that brings a different level of, or different area or angle of meaning and connection to what you're then working on. So I thought that was interesting. Then we got into the generation section. And this was really like an analogy of this writer who was telling how to overcome writer's block, and he would say, write a letter to your mom about what you want to write about, and how like you maybe you're not cut out to be a writer because you're trying to explain this thing in this way, and you don't know how to do it, and then you just like remove the like dear mom and the whining, and then you have the beginning of the paper or the the work. And then once you have the beginning of the work, you step away, you drive home, you sleep, you think about it, you're already thinking about ways to improve it and different ways to like work with it. So it's all about just getting it started, and then your brain works on it in the background once you started it. So that's an analogy for learning. It's like once you get started, once you start trying to do something, your brain starts working on the background to solve it, to figure it out, to improve it. And I thought that was a pretty cool analogy and for generation. then the next section is reflection, and we haven't gotten that far yet. We just talked about Mike Ebersold, the neurosurgeon for chapter 2, using reflection to improve his techniques and his skills, as well as the something Dooley, George Dooley or something, Vince Dooley, doesn't matter, Georgia Bulldogs football coach, and how he used, why would this be in reflection? I guess it was like, I thought it was mostly talking about like breaking down plays, walking through them first, piece by piece, and then stitching together. I don't know why that's reflection, but I guess that's grouped into reflection. So that's basically it. I guess I really haven't read about the coach yet, so there's more to read about him. So that's it for today. I will talk to you tomorrow. See ya.